Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Legal Learning. Today's episode will be hosted by Coast to Coast Legal Aid of South Florida's fantastic summer interns, Addie and Noelle, and will feature Senior Unit Paralegal Richard Rudolph. As always, this presentation is intended to provide general information and should not be considered legal advice about any specific situation. With that, I'll turn it over to Addie and Noelle.
Today, we are going to talk a little bit about the do's and don'ts of debt consolidation with Rick. So we're here with Rick from Coast to Coast Legal Aid, one of our people here who helps a lot with debt consolidation. And we just wanted to cover some really important, facets of debt consolidation, debt relief, and how to make the best choice for yourself. So here's just a brief disclaimer and some of the other areas that Coast to Coast Legal Aid helps with, but today we are all about debt consolidation. So first, we want to touch on the fact that the most important takeaway that we hope you take from this presentation is to call CCLA first. If you're confronted with any sort of debt consolidation or debt relief issue, it's best to call first and fully understand what you're being presented with before making any choices. So the first thing that we want to get into with Rick is this difference between debt relief and debt consolidation.
Yeah, I think a lot of people sort of get the two confused. I know that I don't have the clearest understanding of what the difference is. So, Rick, what are the important differences between debt relief and consolidation?
Excellent question. Debt relief and debt consolidation, actually two different things with the same theory to try and reduce your debts, mostly credit card debts, medical bills along that line. Debt relief is one option and debt consolidation is the second option. So debt relief is a program where you're trying to go ahead and get your debts reduced and paid off through a program, where debt consolidation is a program where you take all your debts and you go ahead and you're actually refinancing them into a loan that's hopefully a low interest rate to help you pay off your debts. So debt relief is just a program where you're working on trying to settle debts, and debt consolidation is when you take all your debts and you pay them off through another loan and hopefully at a lower interest rate to save you money. So two important differences.
Oh, wow.
Definitely. And yeah, much like Addie said, this isn't something that I'm necessarily familiar with either. So I think it's important to have those distinctions really clearly outlined at the outset of any of these decisions that individuals might be making. So I don't know if necessarily we would be getting into the nitty-gritty of the second question quite yet, because we have a couple other things to touch on. But just in a general sense, how would these differences inform someone's decision? Because I know you said relief is kind of more of like, this is how it's actually going to be paid off, versus consolidation is more of a financing and restructuring thing. So how would that difference kind of set one person on one path versus another?
Well, the first thing you want to figure out is what it is you're trying to accomplish. So if you're trying to go ahead and pay all your debts off at a lower interest rate, then that's going to fall under the consolidation. That's where you're getting another loan to pay off all the debts that you owe into one loan. So if you have like 5 different credit card debts and you're paying 5 different credit card companies, say 25 or 27% or 22%, what you're hoping to do is you're hoping to get another loan where you take that loan money and pay off all the credit card debts that you had, and then just pay back one loan at a lower interest rate. That's a consolidation debt. Mm-hmm. Mostly people will use what's called the debt relief program. And the debt relief program is where you cannot get another loan to pay off all the credit card debt. So what you're looking to do is reduce the amount of money you owe or try and come to a settlement. Mm-hmm. So on a debt relief program, when you're doing that program, it's very important that you go ahead and include all your debts that you are trying to resolve in that debt relief program, because you don't want to be working on paying off a few debts and then you have another debt that's not paid off and you end up being sued for that debt. So you want to include all your debts into the debt relief program to try and settle the amount of money that you owe each company.
Mhm. Okay, so it seems like it's incredibly important before moving forward, not only to understand your own situation, but your objective, what specific objective you're working towards. Awesome. So
Absolutely.
let's go ahead and move
Absolutely.
forward.
Yeah, and talk a little bit more specifically about debt relief. So we kind of talked about it, just a little bit, but going a little bit more in depth, what would you say the pros and cons are of debt relief? Why should somebody choose this, and what should maybe sway them away from choosing it?
Okay, debt relief, pros and cons. The pros of a debt relief program is that you're trying to lower the amount of money that you have to pay to the credit card companies to settle the debts. So it's a nice program. However, the big key here is when you use a debt relief company, usually they are going to be charging you a certain percentage of the amount of money they save you. So theoretically, you might be switching one debt for another debt. In other words, if the company goes ahead and say you have $1,000 debt and they save you and say, hey, we could go ahead and resolve this debt for $500, that's going to be a good deal. However, now that debt relief company that you're using, they're going to want a portion of that money to go ahead and pay them for their services. So that's how they make their money.
And is that portion usually communicated up front? That's something clients here would be able to ask prior to entering their debt relief agreement?
Supposedly, if it's a legitimate debt relief company, you should understand all these options before you agree.
So it's really important to keep in mind, as we're consulting with different people before making choices, what their objectives might be. We know our own objectives, but we also know that the objective of the debt relief company is obviously to gain more clients. So I think you kind of spoke briefly to this when you're in talking about, somebody who they maybe might have a smaller debt, but then the fee that they have to pay to debt relief ends up kind of making it so that they're not really gaining anything. Can you speak generally to how somebody might know if debt relief is the right choice for them?
As long as the bottom line is you have to know everything up front. If I sign up with your company to do debt relief, how much money are you going to save me? What is it going to cost me? Bottom line, that's what you're looking at, bottom line. In other words, if you're going to save me $500, how much money am I going to have to pay you? And the answer is going to help you decide what you want to do. Before you do any of these options, debt relief or consolidation, strongly urge to get debtor counseling. That's where you contact an agency such as Coast to Coast Legal Aid, and we will go ahead and provide free debtor counseling. We will tell you the pros and cons of your debt, what can happen to you, what can't happen to you. A lot of times, people that are just getting by on Social Security or just veterans benefits or just SSI or disability end up to where they don't have to pay anything.
Okay, that's good. And it's important now to the flip
Absolutely.
side, debt consolidation. What were the pros and cons of this?
Debt consolidation is, in theory, you're just finding a company that's going to give you a loan, and the loan's got to be big enough. When I say a loan, that would mean credit, that it gives you enough credit to where you could afford to pay off all your debts. So if you have $20,000 in credit card debt, you have to find a company that's willing to go ahead and give you a loan that covers at least $20,000 so that you can pay off all your credit card debts and then you're just making one payment. So that's why they call it a consolidation. But it's just, instead of making out 5 checks every month, you're just making out one check. You're hoping that loan, the interest rate is a lot less than what you're paying for each credit card debt.
Okay.
Sure. Okay, and how would somebody know, if it was right for them? Is it the right choice for them, as opposed to debt relief? Or what are the pros and cons, would you say, a little more in depth? How would somebody choose and know that it's the right choice?
Again, it would depend completely on that person's financial picture, what their income is, what their expenses are, what their living situation is. Everybody's situation is unique. That's
Yeah.
why we urge people to always call and get debtor counseling.
Yeah. So
I know you said one of the key cons associated with debt relief was the fact that sometimes then your obligation that you owe to the debt relief company outweighs the money that you've recovered. Are there any really important cons that you think people should be aware of in the realm of debt consolidation? Because it sounds like a pretty good gig. Are there any cons to it?
If you don't pay, your new loan, it's like getting another credit card. If you don't pay it, you're going to be back in the same situation you're in when you consolidated the debt. But now instead of owing 5 different people, different credit card companies money, now you just owe one, but you'll be back to square one.
I see. Okay. So I think that's an important con to note that if you enter this debt consolidation program or agreement that you're held to it, otherwise it will just become yet another outstanding debt that you're needing to manage. Great. So
Indeed.
Addie touched on this. Call CCLA first. I feel like that is our most important step to take. And then understanding what program is being offered to you, what your objectives are, what your situation is before choosing the option that is best for you. Rick, I don't know if you wanted to share any general advice or closing remarks for people who are making this choice between debt relief or consolidation, who might be considering calling Coast to Coast Legal Aid but aren't sure if they should call yet. Any final remarks to share with these people?
Call us. We are free service. Call us. Call us if you're struggling to pay credit card bills, medical bills. Call us for debtor counseling. I'm sure you will walk away with vast knowledge and help you make a very well-informed decision. Call us. 20 minutes from now, ask me the question. I'm going to say, call us. Let us go ahead and look at your situation so we could give you what we feel would be the best strategy for you to pursue.
And how much would they have to pay for a call like that with someone at Coast to Coast Legal Aid, Rick?
Doesn't cost anything. You give a little bit of information, somebody will call you back. There's no charge for our service, and you'll gain a wealth of information.
That is such a great resource, and we're so happy to be able to share more information about these types of resources with CCLA clients and anyone who might be watching this video. I think that's all we had.
indeed.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you so much, Rick, for sharing your expertise and your insight with everyone who is trying to learn the do's and don'ts of debt consolidation.
The Senior Citizen Law Project at CCLA provides legal advice and representation to eligible Broward County residents on debt collection matters, including medical bills and credit card debt. Our services are available to Broward County residents age 60 and older, adult caregivers for seniors who meet the frailty requirements under Department of Elder Affairs guidelines, and grandparents or other relative caregivers age 55 and older who have minor children living in their home. For more information or to apply for assistance, go to coasttocoastlegalaid.org. Click the Apply Online link at the top of the page or call us at 9547362400. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of Legal Learning.